It is a winter night in 1582. The place is Mortlake, a village on the south bank of the Thames, just outside London. Inside a large house overlooking the river, in a room lined floor to ceiling with books, two men sit in candlelight. This is not just any room. This is the greatest private library in England, perhaps in all of Europe. 4,000 books and manuscripts, ancient texts in Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, works on mathematics, astronomy, geography, medicine, history, philosophy. Scientific instruments gleam on tables, astrolabes, armillary spheres, optical devices, maps cover the walls. Globes show the known world and hint at the unknown. This collection represents the accumulated knowledge of human civilization, and it belongs to one man. John Dee sits at his writing desk near the window. He is 55 years old, but his face is gaunt, his beard long and white, making him look older. He wears the dark robes of a scholar. His hands, ink-stained, scarred from chemical experiments, hover over a blank page, quill pen ready. He is waiting. Across from him, another man sits hunched over a table. On the table, placed on a piece of red silk, is an object of polished black stone. It is an obsidian mirror brought from Mexico by Spanish conquistadors, ancient and sacred to the Aztecs. The surface is so perfectly polished that it reflects the candlelight like dark water. The second man stares into it. His name is Edward Kelley. He is 27 years old, broad-shouldered, intense. His hair is long, grown deliberately to fall over his ears, or rather over where his ears used to be. They were cut off 2 years ago as punishment for forgery. The scars are hidden now, but Edward Kelley is a convicted criminal, a man with a false name and a mysterious past. And John Dee believes that this man can see angels. Kelley's breathing slows. His eyes fix on the obsidian surface. The room is so quiet you can hear the candle flames flutter. Dee waits, pen ready, his entire body tense with anticipation. Then Kelley speaks. His voice is different now, flat, distant. "I see him." Dee leans forward. "Who? Which angel?" "Uriel. He is here." He stands before the glass. Dee begins writing furiously. Every word must be recorded. Every detail matters. What does he look like? Kelley describes the angel in extraordinary detail. The robes, the wings, the expression on his face. Dee writes it all down. Then the angel begins to speak. At least, Kelley says he does. He begins reciting strange words, sounds that belong to no language Dee has ever heard. And Dee knows 12 languages fluently. The words are harsh, guttural, beautiful, alien. Kelley translates. The angel is giving them a message. Instructions, revelations about the nature of the cosmos, about the future of England, about secrets hidden since the beginning of time. This goes on for 2 hours. Dee's hand cramps as he writes. Kelley never breaks his gaze from the mirror, never falters, never seems to blink. Finally, the angel departs. Kelley slumps back in his chair, exhausted. Dee looks at the pages before him, covered in his tight handwriting, filled with angelic words and earthly translations. He believes every word of it. Here is the situation, and it is almost impossible to believe. John Dee is one of the most respected scholars in England. He is the personal advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. He chose the date of her coronation using mathematical calculations and astrology. She trusts him. The greatest minds in Europe correspond with him. Explorers sailing to the New World use his navigational techniques. He has advanced the fields of mathematics, geography, astronomy, and cryptography. He is a serious man, a scientist, a rational thinker, and every night he sits in his library while a convicted forger stares into an ancient mirror and claims to speak with angels. How did this happen? How does a brilliant mathematician end up believing that divine beings are delivering cosmic secrets through a criminal with no ears? That is the mystery we're going to explore tonight. Before we continue with this story, I want to ask you something. If you believe that the greatest mysteries of history deserve serious investigation, if you think the line between genius and madness is more complicated than we like to admit, if you want to understand how one of the Renaissance's brightest minds ended up talking to angels in the dark, then please consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Your support allows us to keep exploring these extraordinary true stories. Tonight, we're going to follow John Dee through one of the strangest lives ever lived. We're going to see how a boy from London became the Queen's advisor and England's greatest scholar, how he accumulated the largest library in the country only to watch it burn, how he met a conman named Edward Kelley and became convinced they were receiving messages from angels, how those angels dictated an entire language, a language still used by occultists today, how the angels commanded him to leave England and travel across Europe for 6 years, bringing his entire family on a bizarre odyssey through Poland, Prague, and Germany, how those same angels eventually commanded him to share his wife with Edward Kelley, and how he obeyed, how he returned to England to find everything he loved destroyed, and how he died alone, forgotten, convinced he had failed. This is a story about obsession, about the danger of wanting knowledge too desperately, about how smart people can be fooled or can fool themselves, about a man who helped build the British Empire but is remembered only as the Queen's magician. And at the center of it all is one question we still can't answer after 400 years. In that room in Mortlake, in the candlelight, staring into the obsidian mirror, was Edward Kelley seeing something real? Or was John Dee the victim of one of history's greatest cons? We will examine the evidence. We will explore the theories. We will look at the actual objects, the mirror, the diaries, the wax seals that survive in museums today. But I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to solve this mystery because 4 centuries of investigation haven't solved it. The truth about John Dee and his angels remains as dark and polished as that obsidian mirror, reflecting only questions, never answers. This is the story of the man who talked to angels, or thought he did, or pretended he did, or something else entirely. Welcome to the Midnight Archives. John Dee is born on July 13th, 1527, in Tower Ward, London. This is during the reign of Henry VIII, when England is in religious turmoil, about to break from the Catholic Church, about to dissolve the monasteries, about to execute queens and bishops and anyone who stands in the king's way. Dee's father is a minor gentleman, a textile merchant with Welsh ancestry, The family name was originally Dee, Welsh for black, which was anglicized to Dee. They are not wealthy, not noble, but respectable enough to give young John a good education, and John is brilliant. By age 15, he is at St. John's College, Cambridge. While other boys his age are apprenticing to trades or working in their father's shops, John Dee is studying Greek, Latin, mathematics, astronomy, and what they call natural philosophy, what we would call science. His work ethic is legendary. He later writes that during his university years, he slept only 4 hours a night, 18 hours of study every day, reading until his eyes burned, solving mathematical problems by candlelight, learning languages, memorizing texts. He receives his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1545 at age 18. His master's degree comes 2 years later. He is 20 years old and already one of the most educated men in England. But England is not enough for him. In 1547, Dee travels to the Netherlands to study at the University of Louvain, one of the great centers of learning in Europe. Here, he meets the leading mathematicians and astronomers of the age. He studies advanced geometry, cartography, and the new astronomical theories that are beginning to challenge the old Earth-centered universe. He becomes friends with Gerardus Mercator, the greatest mapmaker of the Renaissance. Mercator is developing the map projection that will bear his name, the technique that allows the curved surface of the Earth to be represented on a flat map. Dee learns these techniques. He begins to understand that mathematics and geography can unlock the world, can make exploration possible, can build empires. In Louvain, Dee also encounters something else, the mystical traditions of the Renaissance. This is the age when ancient texts are being rediscovered, works attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, Kabbalistic writings, books of ritual magic. To the scholars of the 1500s, these are not separate from science. They are part of the same quest for knowledge. Isaac Newton, a century later, will write more about alchemy than about physics. The line between science and magic has not yet been drawn. Dee absorbs it all, the mathematics and the mysticism, the astronomy and the astrology, the practical and the supernatural. He does not see them as opposites. To him, they are different ways of understanding the same cosmos. He returns to England in 1551 at age 24, with a reputation as one of the most learned young men in Europe. Dee quickly establishes himself in London's intellectual circles. He is not wealthy, scholars rarely are, but he is respected. He begins to collect books, manuscripts, scientific instruments. His library grows year by year, and he begins to work on projects that will shape England's future. English merchants and explorers are beginning to look beyond Europe. The Spanish and Portuguese have claimed vast territories in the Americas and Asia. England is late to this game, but there are men who want to catch up, who dream of finding the Northwest Passage to Asia, of claiming lands in the New World, of building an English empire. These men come to John Dee. He provides the mathematical calculations for navigation. He teaches pilots how to use instruments to determine their position at sea. He creates maps. He writes treatises on geography and exploration. He coins the phrase British Empire, one of the first people to envision England as an imperial power. In 1570, he writes a preface to the first English translation of Euclid's Geometry, a work that makes advanced mathematics accessible to English readers and helps train a generation of navigators, surveyors, and engineers. He is building the intellectual foundation for England's expansion across the globe. But most people don't know his name. He works quietly, advising, teaching, writing. The explorers who use his techniques become famous. Dee remains in his library, but there is one person who notices. One person who understands his value, the Queen. Before Elizabeth I becomes Queen, before she becomes the most powerful woman in Europe, she is Princess Elizabeth, and she is in mortal danger. The year is 1553. Her half-sister Mary I has just taken the throne. Mary is Catholic, determined to return England to the Roman Church. She will burn hundreds of Protestants at the stake during her 5-year reign. They will call her Bloody Mary. Elizabeth is Protestant, or at least she's suspected of being Protestant, and that makes her a threat. Mary has her watched constantly. Any sign of disloyalty, any hint of conspiracy, and Elizabeth could be executed. In 1555, someone asks John Dee to cast Elizabeth's horoscope. Now, this seems innocent to us, just reading someone's fortune. But in Tudor England, astrology is serious business. Kings and queens consult astrologers for major decisions, and more importantly, casting a royal horoscope can be interpreted as predicting, or even causing, the monarch's fate. It can be called treason. It can be called witchcraft. Dee casts the horoscope. Someone tells Queen Mary, and John Dee is arrested. He is brought to Hampton Court Palace and charged with calculating, using mathematics and magic to harm the Queen. The accusation is that he calculated when Mary would die and told Elizabeth she would become Queen. This is a capital offense. People have been burned at the stake for less. Dee is imprisoned. For weeks, he waits in a cell, not knowing if he will be released or dragged to Smithfield to be burned alive as a heretic and traitor. But someone intervenes. We don't know who, perhaps Elizabeth herself, secretly using her influence, or perhaps one of Dee's powerful friends. After months of investigation, the charges are dropped. There is not enough evidence. He is released, but the damage is done. People whisper about him now. Dee the conjurer, Dee the magician, the scholar who dabbles in dark arts. It is a reputation he will never fully escape. And it teaches him something important. Knowledge is dangerous. Power is dangerous. You can be brilliant and still end up on a pyre. When Elizabeth becomes Queen in 1558, John Dee understands exactly how precarious power is, how quickly things can change, how important it is to have protection. On November the 17th, 1558, Queen Mary dies. Elizabeth, at age 25, becomes Queen Elizabeth I. One of her first acts is to consult John Dee about when she should be crowned. This is no small thing. The coronation date matters. It must be chosen carefully, using astrology and mathematics to ensure good fortune for the new reign. Elizabeth trusts Dee to make this calculation. Dee studies the stars, consults charts, performs complex calculations. He chooses January 15th, 1559. The coronation takes place on that date. Elizabeth will reign for 45 years, until 1603, one of the longest and most successful reigns in English history. She will defeat the Spanish Armada, establish England as a world power, preside over a golden age of literature and exploration, and she will never forget that John Dee chose the date that began it all. Dee becomes the Queen's unofficial advisor. He is never given an official court position. Elizabeth keeps him at arm's length, publicly, perhaps because of his reputation for magic. But privately, she consults him regularly. He advises her on astrology, on navigation and exploration, on cryptography and codes, and, some historians believe, on intelligence gathering and espionage. There is a theory, and we'll explore it more later, that John Dee was one of Elizabeth's spies, that he traveled across Europe gathering intelligence, that he signed his reports with 007, two circles representing the eyes of God, and a 7 for luck. If this is true, if Dee was Agent 007, it would make him the original James Bond. But the evidence is tantalizing rather than conclusive. What we know for certain is that Dee has the Queen's protection, and in Tudor England, that is the most valuable thing you can have. Throughout the 1560s and 1570s, Dee's library grows. He spends every penny he can spare on books and manuscripts. He buys them from collectors, copies them by hand, acquires them from dissolved monasteries. By 1583, he will have approximately 4,000 books and manuscripts. This is astonishing. The Cambridge University Library at this time has around 450 books. Dee's personal library is nearly 10 times larger. It is the finest collection in England. Scholars travel from across Europe to study there. Dee welcomes them. He loans books, discusses ideas, shares his knowledge freely. His house at Mortlake becomes an informal academy. He also has a laboratory. He conducts chemical experiments, what they call alchemy. He is trying to understand the nature of matter, trying to discover if base metals can be transformed into gold, trying to create medicines and dyes and materials. Some of his chemical work is genuinely advanced for his time. He develops techniques for dyeing fabrics in vivid, long-lasting colors. He experiments with optics and creates lenses and mirrors, but he is also chasing older, stranger goals. The Philosopher's Stone, the elixir of life, the secrets that the ancient texts promise but never quite deliver. And this is where the story turns. Because by the time he is in his 50s, John Dee has mastered everything that human learning can teach him. He knows mathematics. He understands astronomy and geography. He has studied medicine, history, languages, philosophy, theology. He has read the Greek philosophers and the Roman historians and the medieval scholars and the modern scientists. And it is not enough. There is a worldview in the Renaissance that we have lost. It goes like this. The universe is full of hidden knowledge, secrets that were known to the ancients but have been forgotten. Adam, the first man, spoke a pure language before the Tower of Babel, before God confused human tongues. That language contained power, the ability to name things truly, to speak words that could reshape reality. The ancient Egyptians knew secrets of transformation. The Hebrew prophets communed with angels. The Greek mystery cults held initiations that revealed cosmic truths. All of this knowledge has been lost. It exists in fragments, scattered across ancient texts, encoded in symbols, preserved by secret traditions. And the only way to recover it is to go to the source, to speak with the beings who were there at the beginning, to talk to angels. This is what John Dee believes. He has spent 30 years accumulating human knowledge, and he has hit a wall. The books can only teach him so much. The experiments can only reveal so much. If he wants to know the deepest secrets, the structure of the cosmos, the nature of God, the future of England, the fate of his soul, he needs to go beyond books. He needs direct contact with the divine. In 1581, Dee begins trying to communicate with angels himself. He sets up a ritual space in his library. He acquires crystals and mirrors to use as show stones, objects that spirits can appear in or communicate through. He performs elaborate prayers and invocations drawn from grimoires and magical texts. He sits for hours, staring into crystal balls, trying to see visions. Nothing happens. He fasts, prays more intensely, tries different crystals, different mirrors, different invocations. Still nothing. The problem is that Dee is not a natural scryer, a medium, someone who can see visions. He is a scholar, a mathematician. His mind works in logic and calculation, not in visions and intuition. He needs someone who can see what he cannot. Someone who can be his eyes into the spiritual realm while he serves as the scribe, the recorder, the interpreter. He asks a few people to help him, friends, students. They try. Some claim to see vague shapes in the crystals, but the results are disappointing, unconvincing. By early 1582, Dee is frustrated, desperate. He has devoted a year to this quest and has nothing to show for it. And then, in March 1582, a stranger arrives at his door. The stranger says his name is Edward Talbot. He is young, intense, and he claims he can see spirits. He asks if Dee needs a scryer. Dee invites him in. They perform a session. The young man stares into one of Dee's crystals and immediately begins describing angels in vivid detail. He sees them, hears them, can translate their messages. Dee is electrified. This is what he's been waiting for. Finally, someone who can actually make contact. Within days, the young man admits that Edward Talbot is not his real name. His name is Edward Kelley. He has a criminal record, convicted of forgery, punished by having his ears cut off. He is using a false name to hide his past. Dee should be alarmed. This is a convicted criminal, a liar, someone who cannot be trusted. But Dee has just spent a year failing to contact angels on his own, and this young man can do it effortlessly. Dee makes a decision that will shape the rest of his life. He invites Edward Kelley to stay, to become his permanent scryer. They will work together, Dee as the scholar and priest, Kelley as the medium, and together they will unlock the secrets of the cosmos. It is March 1582. The sessions begin, and for the next 7 years, John Dee will write down every word that Edward Kelley claims the angels say. Thousands and thousands of pages, an entire language, prophecies, revelations, bizarre commands. And the question that historians still debate, was Edward Kelley one of history's greatest con men? Or was something stranger happening in that room? We're about to find out. But first, we need to understand what those sessions were like, how they worked, what the angels supposedly said, and why a brilliant man like John Dee believed it all. The sessions, Dee calls them actions, follow a ritual pattern. They begin in the late afternoon or evening when the light is fading. Dee prepares the space, lighting candles, arranging the ritual objects. The most important object is the showstone, usually the obsidian mirror, but sometimes one of his crystal balls. The obsidian mirror is particularly important. It is Aztec, brought back from Mexico by the Spanish conquistadors who destroyed the Aztec Empire. To the Aztecs, obsidian mirrors were sacred objects, used by priests to communicate with gods and spirits. How Dee acquired it, we don't know, but he believes it is powerful. The mirror is placed on a table covered with a special cloth. Around it are placed wax seals, circular discs of wax inscribed with angelic names and symbols. These seals are supposed to summon specific angels. and protect the scryers from evil spirits. Dee sits at his desk with pen and paper. He is the receiver, the one who records everything Kelley sits before the shoe stone. He is the seer, the one who looks into the mirror and reports what he sees. Dee begins with prayers. Usually in Latin, he invokes God, asks for angelic presence, requests divine knowledge. The prayers can go on for 10, 20, 30 minutes. Dee takes this seriously. He is not playing at magic. He genuinely believes he is engaging in sacred communion. Then Kelley stares into the obsidian surface, and he begins to see. At first, Kelley sees lights in the mirror, flashes of color, then shapes begin to form. He describes what he sees in extraordinary detail. An angel appears, radiant, beautiful, sometimes terrifying. He describes the angel's face, robes, wings, expression. Sometimes multiple angels appear. Sometimes they are accompanied by strange beasts or symbols. The angels speak. At least, Kelley says they do. Sometimes they speak in English, and Kelley simply translates. But increasingly, they speak in their own language, a harsh, guttural, powerful tongue that sounds nothing like any earthly language. When the angels speak in their language, they do so letter by letter. They indicate letters on a complex grid of characters, and Kelley calls out each letter. Dee writes them down. Only after the message is complete do they translate it into English, letter by letter, word by word. This process is painstaking. A single angelic message can take hours to transmit, but the result is astonishing. Over months and years, the angels dictate an entire language, complete with vocabulary, grammar, and syntax. They call it Enochian, after the biblical patriarch Enoch, who, according to scripture, walked with God and was taken up to heaven without dying. What do the angels say? Many things. Some messages are spiritual teachings, lessons about the nature of God, the structure of the cosmos. The orders of angels Dee, who has spent his life studying theology and philosophy, finds these messages profound and consistent with his understanding of divine truth. Some messages are prophetic. The angels predict future events, the fate of nations, the rise and fall of monarchs, wars, and disasters. These prophecies are usually vague enough that they can be interpreted multiple ways, but sometimes they are oddly specific. Some messages are practical instructions. The angels tell Dee and Kelley where to travel, who to speak with, what actions to take. These commands will eventually lead them on a 6-year journey across Europe. And some messages are deeply strange. The angels speak in riddles. They give geometric designs and mathematical formulas. They demand that certain rituals be performed, certain objects be obtained, certain sacrifices be made. One recurring theme in the angelic messages is that a great apocalypse is coming. The world as they know it will soon be transformed. Dee and Kelley are chosen to prepare for this transformation, to deliver warnings to the powerful, to preserve divine knowledge for those who will come after. Dee believes all of it. He records everything meticulously. His diaries from this period fill thousands of pages, all in his cramped handwriting, all documenting every single session, every angelic word, every vision Kelley reports. These diaries still exist. You can see them today in the British Museum and other collections. They are astonishing documents, the record of 7 years of supposed conversations with angels. But as we read them now, 4 centuries later, one question screams from every page. Was Edward Kelley making it all up? If you approach the story with skepticism, the red flags are obvious. Edward Kelley is the only person who can see the angels. Dee never sees them himself. He must trust Kelley completely, must accept that what Kelley reports is accurate. Kelley is a convicted criminal. He has already proven himself willing to lie and deceive for money. His ears were cut off as punishment for forgery, creating fake documents, pretending things are real that are not real. This is literally what he was convicted of doing. The angels often make demands that benefit Kelley. They say he should receive money, gifts, rewards. They say he should be treated with respect, that Dee should trust him completely, that anyone who doubts Kelley is doubting the angels themselves. When Dee questions something Kelley reports, the angels become angry. They threaten to withdraw, to stop communicating, to leave Dee in darkness. This is classic manipulation, punishing skepticism, rewarding blind faith. And perhaps most damningly, the angels never provide verifiable proof. They never predict specific events that couldn't be known by natural means. They never provide knowledge that Kelley couldn't have learned through ordinary research or guesswork. To a modern observer, or even to a skeptical observer in the 1580s, this looks like a con, a brilliant, elaborate, sustained con, but a con nonetheless. So why does Dee believe? First, understand that Dee desperately wants to believe. He has spent a year trying to contact angels on his own and failing. He has invested his entire worldview in the idea that such contact is possible. When Kelley appears and can do what Dee cannot, Dee needs it to be real. This is cognitive dissonance. Once you've committed to a belief, once you've invested time and emotion and reputation, it becomes psychologically painful to admit you were wrong. It's easier to double down, to find reasons to keep believing, than to face the possibility that you've been fooled. Second, the Enochian language is genuinely impressive. It's not just random gibberish, it has structure, consistency, grammar rules. Thousands of words are dictated over years, and they all fit together into a coherent linguistic system. Could Edward Kelley really have invented an entire language on the spot, in real time, while maintaining the pretense of receiving it from angels? That seems almost as impossible as the angels being real. Third, Dee is brilliant. Perhaps too brilliant to believe he could be fooled. He has spent his life analyzing, questioning, investigating. He has advised the Queen, taught the greatest minds in Europe, built the finest library in England. Someone that intelligent can't be tricked by a common criminal, can he? This is a trap that smart people fall into. They assume their intelligence protects them from deception. But intelligence can actually make you more vulnerable, because you're so good at constructing elaborate justifications for what you want to believe. Fourth, Dee is isolated. The sessions take place in private, just him and Kelley. There are no other witnesses, no skeptical observers to point out inconsistencies. It's an echo chamber. Kelley reports what he sees, Dee writes it down, and then they discuss the meaning together. There's no outside voice saying, "Wait, this doesn't make sense." And finally, there's the possibility, slim but real, that Dee knows, on some level, that it's not entirely genuine, but he doesn't care. Perhaps he finds the process valuable regardless. Perhaps the angelic messages help him think through problems, organize his thoughts, explore possibilities. Perhaps it's a form of creative inspiration, and the question of whether the angels are literally real becomes less important than what the sessions produce. We'll never know what Dee truly believed in his private, unspoken thoughts. We only know what he wrote, and what he wrote is the record of a man who believed completely. While all this is happening, Dee has a normal life to maintain. He is married to Jane Fromond, his third wife. He married her in 1578, and she is much younger than him. She's in her 20s when he's in his 50s. They have children together, eventually 8 children, though not all will survive to adulthood. Jane is aware of the sessions with Kelley. She knows what her husband is doing in his library night after night. How does she feel about it? The historical record doesn't tell us much. Women's voices are often silent in these old documents, but we know she stays with him, raises their children, and eventually will be dragged along on a bizarre journey across Europe because the angels command it. Money is a constant problem. Dee receives small grants and gifts from the Queen, but they're never enough. The library costs money to maintain. The household costs money. The chemical experiments cost money. And now he's supporting Edward Kelley and Kelley's wife as well. Kelley married a woman named Jane. Yes, both wives are named Jane, in 1582, shortly after joining Dee's household. 2 families living together in Mortlake, while the men conduct angelic sessions and the women try to keep the household running. It's a strange domestic arrangement, and it's about to get stranger. From March 1582 through 1583, the sessions intensify. What began as occasional experiments become daily events. Sometimes multiple sessions in a single day, Dee becomes consumed by the project. His other work, the navigation treatises, the mathematical texts, the advising of explorers, begins to suffer. People in London start talking. Dee's reputation, already stained with accusations of magic, grows darker. The conjurer of Mortlake, the Queen's magician. The whispers say he's summoning demons, practicing black magic, consorting with evil spirits. This is dangerous. England is officially Protestant now, but the fear of witchcraft is real. People are still executed for witchcraft. Dee has the Queen's protection, but even that has limits. And the angels seem to know that Dee is in danger. They begin to give warnings. England is not safe for them anymore. They must leave. They must travel to continental Europe to deliver the angelic messages to the princes and kings there. Dee resists at first. Leave England, leave his library, take his whole family on a dangerous journey, based on what Edward Kelley claims angels are saying. But the angelic messages become more insistent, threatening. If Dee does not obey, he will lose the angels' favor. The great work will be undone. All will be lost. And there's another factor. Dee is hearing rumors that his enemies are plotting against him, that powerful people at court want him arrested, want his library seized, want him discredited. Some historians believe these fears were well-founded. Others think Dee was becoming paranoid, seeing threats everywhere. Either way, in September 1583, John Dee makes a decision that will change everything. He will obey the angels. He will leave England. He will take his wife, his children, Edward Kelley, and Kelley's wife, and they will travel to continental Europe. He packs up his most valuable books and instruments. He makes arrangements for the rest of his library to be kept safe in his absence. And in September 1583, they depart 2 families, traveling together on a mission to deliver angelic messages to the courts of Europe. They expect to be gone for a year, perhaps 2. They will be gone for 6 years. And when John Dee finally returns to England in 1589, his library will be destroyed, his reputation will be in ruins, his marriage will be shattered, and he will be a broken man. But he doesn't know that yet. In September 1583, as they board a ship to cross to the Netherlands, John Dee believes he is on a divine mission. The angels have commanded it, and John Dee obeys. Imagine what this journey must have been like. 2 middle-aged men, 2 young women, and several small children traveling across Europe in the 1580s. This is not easy travel. There are no trains, no cars, no comfortable hotels. They travel by horse, by cart, by ship when they can. They stay in inns, in the houses of hosts, sometimes sleeping rough when no accommodation is available. They carry with them trunks of books, the scrying stones, the wax seals, the ritual equipment. Dee cannot bear to be without his most precious texts. This is his life's work packed into wooden chests, hauled across muddy roads and through dangerous territories. Europe in the 1580s is dangerous. Wars are constant. Bandits haunt the roads. Disease is everywhere. And 2 English families, traveling with strange equipment and talking about angels, attract attention and suspicion wherever they go. Their first destination is Poland. They have been invited by a Polish nobleman, Count Albert Waski, who met Dee in England and was fascinated by his work. Waski is interested in alchemy. He dreams of finding the philosopher's stone, of turning lead into gold. He thinks Dee can help him. This is a pattern that will repeat throughout their journey. Powerful men invite them, hoping for miracles, hoping for gold, for magical powers, for secret knowledge. And when the miracles don't materialize, the powerful men lose interest and the travelers must move on. They arrive in Poland in early 1584 after a grueling journey. Count Waski welcomes them warmly. He gives them rooms in his castle, provides for their needs, and eagerly participates in the angelic sessions. The sessions continue. Kelley stares into the obsidian mirror. The angels appear. They give messages to Waski, promising him great things, telling him he is chosen for an important role in history, hinting that he will achieve wealth and power. Waski is delighted. He showers Dee and Kelley with gifts. He tells other nobles about these miracle workers from England. But weeks pass, months pass. The angels keep promising, but nothing concrete happens. Waski is spending money supporting these 2 families, and he's not getting the gold he hoped for. The angels sense the growing tension. They deliver a new message. They must move on. They must travel to Prague, to the court of Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor. That is where the great work will truly begin. Waski, disappointed but still somewhat under the spell, agrees to help them travel to Prague. In August 1584, the entire group moves south. If there is one place in Europe where John Dee might find a sympathetic audience, it is Prague. The Holy Roman Emperor, Rudolph II, is obsessed with the occult. His court is filled with alchemists, astrologers, mystics and magicians. He collects strange artifacts, funds elaborate chemical experiments, and dreams of unlocking cosmic secrets. Prague, under Rudolph, has become a center for everything mysterious and magical. If Dee and Kelley can demonstrate their angelic communications here, they will be embraced, funded, protected. They arrive in Prague in August 1584. Dee sends word to the emperor requesting an audience, and they wait. But there's a complication. A serious one. Rudolph II is Catholic. The Holy Roman Empire is Catholic. and the Catholic Church does not look kindly on people who claim to speak with angels outside the authority of the Church. When word reaches Rome that an English scholar and his associate are conducting séances and claiming direct contact with divine beings, the Vatican responds. The Pope's nuncio, his representative, sends a warning to Rudolf. John Dee is practicing necromancy, summoning spirits, engaging in forbidden magic. The Church is already nervous about Protestantism spreading. The last thing they want is people claiming they can talk to angels without priests, without sacraments, without the Church as intermediary. Rudolf is in a difficult position. He personally is fascinated by Dee and wants to hear what the angels are saying, but he cannot openly defy the Pope. He is the Holy Roman Emperor, holy meaning Catholic. Supporting someone condemned by Rome would be politically disastrous. In 1586, Rudolf quietly tells Dee that he must leave Prague. It's not a full expulsion, but it's a clear message. You cannot stay here. Dee is devastated. He believed Prague would be his home, the place where his work would be recognized and supported. Instead, after less than 2 years, he is being forced out. The angels, predictably, have an explanation. Prague was just a stopping point. The real work lies elsewhere. They must continue their journey. But where? From 1586 to 1589, Dee and his traveling household wander through various territories of the Holy Roman Empire, moving between Polish and German lands, staying with whatever nobleman will host them, always on the edge of wearing out their welcome money, is increasingly tight. The generous gifts from Count Waski have stopped. Rudolf sent them away without funding. Dee has to beg for support from minor nobles, each of whom hosts them for a few months before losing interest. The children are growing up on the road. Dee's son, Arthur, is born in 1579, before they left England. He's 5 years old when the journey begins, 11 by the time they return. He spends his childhood traveling across Europe, watching his father talk to angels through Edward Kelley. What must that do to a child? Jane Dee, Dee's wife, must be exhausted, constantly moving, managing a household in foreign lands, dealing with children, with no permanent home, no stability, and all because her husband believes angels are telling him what to do. The sessions continue. Every few days, Dee and Kelley conduct an action. The obsidian mirror comes out. Kelley stares. The angels speak. Dee records everything. By now they have accumulated thousands of pages of angelic communications. The Enochian language is complete, a full vocabulary, grammar, and syntax. The angels have delivered prophecies about the fate of Europe, instructions for rituals, geometric designs, mathematical formulas. But what is it all for? Where is it leading? Dee thought they would deliver these messages to kings and change the course of history. Instead, they're drifting from castle to castle, tolerated but never truly embraced. And then, in 1587, the angels deliver a command that will shatter everything. They are staying in Trebon, a town in southern Bohemia, now part of the Czech Republic, as guests of a local nobleman. It is spring of 1587. During one of the sessions, Kelley reports that a specific angel has appeared. Her name is Madimi. She is described as young, beautiful, sometimes appearing as a little girl, sometimes as a woman. She has appeared in sessions before, always with gentle, encouraging messages. But today, Madimi's message is not gentle. Kelley, staring into the mirror, begins to relay what she is saying. His voice is tense. He seems disturbed. The angel Madimi says that God requires a test of faith, True spiritual seekers must give up all earthly attachments. All property, all pride, all possessions must be shared completely between the two families. Dee agrees. They have already shared their resources, their books, their equipment. What more must be shared? And then Kelley speaks the rest of the message. Everything must be shared, including wives. There is a long silence in the room. Kelley says the angel is commanding that they practice cross-matching, that Jane Dee must become, at least temporarily, Edward Kelley's wife, and Jane Kelley must become John Dee's wife. This is not a suggestion. The angel is clear. This is a command from God. If they refuse, they will lose the angel's favor. All the work of the past 5 years will be for nothing. John Dee is a devout Christian. He believes in the sanctity of marriage. He loves his wife. The idea of another man touching her is horrifying to him, but the angel has spoken. And Dee has built his entire life for the past 5 years on the premise that these angelic messages are real, that they come from God, that they must be obeyed. If he refuses, he is admitting that the angels might not be real, that the entire project might be a delusion, that he has wasted 5 years, dragged his family across Europe, abandoned his library, all for nothing. The cognitive dissonance is unbearable. He has to believe. He has sacrificed too much not to believe. For several days, Dee wrestles with this command. He prays. He fasts. He writes in his diary about his spiritual torment. The diary entries from this period are painful to read. A man trying to convince himself to do something he finds morally repugnant because he believes God demands it. On May 22nd, 1587, Dee writes in his diary that he has agreed to obey the angelic command. The cross-matching takes place. What exactly this means, whether it was a single night, multiple encounters, or something symbolic, is unclear from the historical record. Dee's diary becomes circumspect about the details, but the result is clear enough. Jane Dee becomes pregnant. Whose child was it? Was it John Dee's child, conceived in the normal course of marriage, just coincidentally timed with this bizarre cross-matching event? Or was it Edward Kelley's child? Evidence that the angelic command was exactly what it looks like from the outside. Edward Kelley manipulating the situation to seduce or assault Jane Dee, using the angels as cover. We will never know. Jane Dee never recorded her thoughts on any of this. Her voice is silent. We don't know if she believed in the angels, if she consented to what happened, if she was coerced, if she was horrified, if she felt violated. She was a woman in the 1580s, completely dependent on her husband, in a foreign country, with no resources of her own, surrounded by people who believed her husband could talk to angels. What choice did she have but to go along? The son born from this pregnancy was named Theodorus Trebonianus Dee. Theodore, born in Trebon. He would grow up as John Dee's son, but the shadow of doubt about his paternity would always hang over the family. After the cross-matching incident, the relationship between Dee and Kelley begins to deteriorate. Dee's diary, usually so detailed, becomes sparse. He writes less about the sessions. There's a sense that something has broken between them. Kelley becomes more difficult. He complains about the living conditions, about lack of money, about how he's not being properly rewarded for his abilities. The angels, through Kelley, become more demanding and more critical of Dee. In early 1589, they finally separate. Kelley decides to stay in Bohemia. He has found a new patron. He's going to try the old alchemist game again, promising to turn lead into gold for various nobles. He doesn't need Dee anymore. Dee decides to return to England. He's been gone for 6 years. His children are growing up rootless. He wants to go home, to see his library, to re-establish his life. They part ways in February 1589. There is no record of a friendly farewell. After 7 years of working together, after sharing everything, books, knowledge, wives, they simply separate and never see each other again. Edward Kelley stays in Bohemia and continues his career as an alchemist. He promises gold to anyone who will fund him. Eventually, Emperor Rudolph II has him arrested and imprisoned when the gold fails to materialize. There are reports that Kelley died in 1597, falling from a tower while trying to escape from prison. He would have been 42 years old, but even this is uncertain. Some accounts claim he survived, that he faked his death and escaped to England, where he continued his cons under a new name. Like everything else about Edward Kelley, his end is shrouded in uncertainty. John Dee, Jane, and their children begin the long journey back to England in early 1589. They travel through Germany, then to the Netherlands, then finally across the Channel to England. They arrive home in Mortlake in December 1589. Dee has been gone for 6 years. He is now 62 years old. His hair and beard are completely white. He looks like an old man. He is eager to return to his library, to his books, to his old life. But when he walks into his house at Mortlake, he discovers that his old life no longer exists. His library has been destroyed. While Dee was abroad, rumors had spread about him. Dee, the conjurer. Dee, the sorcerer. The man who summons demons. At some point during his absence, the exact date is unclear, a mob broke into his house. They ransacked the library. They stole books. They burned manuscripts. They smashed instruments. They destroyed decades of work. Of his 4,000 books and manuscripts, perhaps a quarter survive. The rest are gone, stolen, burned, scattered, lost. Some of the stolen books turn up later in private collections. Some are sold by thieves who don't understand what they have, but most simply vanish. One of the greatest libraries in Europe, destroyed by a superstitious mob. Dee is devastated. The library was his life's work. Every book was carefully chosen, many copied by hand, some irreplaceable. It represented the sum of human knowledge as he understood it. And now it's gone. He tries to salvage what he can. He recovers some books. He attempts to rebuild. But he's 62 years old. He's been traveling for 6 years. He has no money, and most importantly, he has no more energy. The great scholar is broken, and the angels, they've gone silent. Kelley is gone, and without Kelley, there are no more visions, no more messages, no more sessions. John Dee is alone with his ruined library and his ruined life. The question must haunt him now. Was any of it real? Did he really speak with angels? Or did he waste 7 years, destroy his marriage, abandon his home, lose his library, all for the delusions transmitted by a con man with no ears? He doesn't write about his doubts, but they must be there. What happens to faith when everything you believed in has cost you everything you loved? John Dee returns to England to find himself a relic of the past. Queen Elizabeth is old now. She's in her 50s, still on the throne but increasingly distracted by political crises. England is recovering from the Spanish Armada of 1588. Spain sent a massive invasion fleet, and England defeated it, but the war drags on. The Queen has other concerns than her old astrologer Dee petitions her for help. He needs money to rebuild his library. He needs a position, some official post that will give him an income. He sends letters. requests audiences, reminds her of his services. She sends him small amounts of money, token gifts, but nothing substantial. No position, no pension, no real support. Perhaps she's lost interest. Perhaps she's embarrassed by his reputation. Perhaps she simply has other priorities. Whatever the reason, the protection he once enjoyed is gone, and Dee's reputation is in ruins. The rumors about his time abroad have spread. People say he conducted black magic in Prague, that he summoned demons, that he's dangerous, possibly heretical. His enemies at court use this against him. They ensure he gets no official positions. They whisper that he's mad, that he's a charlatan, that the Queen should distance herself from him. Dee tries to defend himself. He writes treatises explaining his work, insisting that he never practiced forbidden magic, that he only sought knowledge of divine truth. But once a reputation is damaged, it's almost impossible to repair. In 1595, Dee finally receives an appointment, not the prestigious position he hoped for, but something: Warden of Christ's College in Manchester. This is a minor position at a minor institution. Manchester is far from London, far from the centres of power and learning. The college is small, underfunded, fractious. The job pays poorly and comes with endless administrative headaches, but it's something, it's income. Dee accepts. He moves to Manchester, leaving his library, what's left of it, in Mortlake. Jane and the children come with him. They will spend 9 years there, from 1595 to 1604. These are not happy years. Dee is a scholar, forced to be an administrator. He's dealing with college politics, financial problems, disputes with the staff. This is not what he dedicated his life to. This is not why he learned 12 languages and advised the Queen and talked to angels. He's going through the motions, doing his duty, but his heart isn't in it. He's an old man now, watching his life wind down in a backwater town, far from everything he cared about. And then, in 1603, Queen Elizabeth dies. Elizabeth dies on March 24th, 1603, at age 69. She never married, never had children. The Tudor line ends with her. King James VI of Scotland becomes King James I of England. A new dynasty begins, and John Dee loses the last thread connecting him to power. James I is not interested in Dee. James is suspicious of magic and witchcraft. He will later write a book called Daemonology, condemning the practice. The last thing he wants at court is an old astrologer with a reputation for conjuring. Dee's appointment in Manchester becomes even more tenuous under the new regime. His enemies finally succeed in having him removed from the position in 1604. He returns to Mortlake, jobless, 67 years old. His wife, Jane, seriously ill. Jane dies in March 1605, probably of plague. After everything they went through together, the angelic sessions, the journey across Europe, the cross-matching incident, the years of poverty, she dies and Dee is left alone. From 1605 to 1608, John Dee lives in Mortlake with his daughter Catherine, who cares for him. He is selling off his remaining books to survive. The books he spent a lifetime collecting, the ones that survived the mob, are being sold one by one to pay for food and firewood. He writes letters begging for help. He petitions King James for a pension. He reminds anyone who will listen of his services to the crown. The navigation techniques, the maps, the advice to Elizabeth. Nothing comes of it. A few old friends visit him. A few scholars come to consult his remaining books. But mostly, He's alone with his memories. What does he think about during those final years? Does he regret the angelic sessions? Does he still believe they were real? Does he wonder if Edward Kelley fooled him? Does he blame himself for losing everything? His diary, which recorded so much of his life, becomes sparse in these final years. Just brief notes, dates, visitors, mundane details. The passion is gone. John Dee dies in either December 1608 or March 1609. The records are unclear. He is 81 years old. He is buried in the churchyard of St. Mary's Church in Mortlake, where he lived most of his adult life. The funeral is small. A few local people attend. No representatives from the court. No grand ceremony for the man who once advised the Queen. And within a generation, even the location of his grave is forgotten. The church still stands, but no one knows exactly where John Dee was buried. His grave marker, if he had one, is lost. The man who wanted to be remembered, who wanted to unlock eternal truths, who talked to angels and believed he would change the world, dies and is forgotten. But John Dee did leave things behind, just not what he expected. His diaries survived. Thousands of pages of notes about the angelic sessions they were preserved, passed through various collectors, and eventually ended up in museums and libraries. You can read them today. The British Museum has many of them. They're extraordinary documents. The obsidian mirror survived. It's in the British Museum in London. You can go see it. The same mirror that Edward Kelley stared into, claiming to see angels. It sits in a glass case, a polished black stone, reflecting nothing but the museum lights and the faces of curious tourists. Several of his crystal balls survived. They're in various museums. The Science Museum in London has one. The wax seals with angelic names, some of those survived too, physical objects from those sessions. And the Enochian language survived. That's the strangest legacy. Whether it was dictated by angels or invented by Edward Kelley, it became real through use. Occultists in the 19th century rediscovered it. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn made it central to their magical system. Aleister Crowley used it extensively. Modern chaos magicians still practice Enochian magic. There are books you can buy today that teach you how to use the Enochian system. Websites devoted to it. People who believe it works, who claim to use it to achieve magical effects. Whether the angels were real or not, the language has taken on a life of its own. And there's another legacy, one that Dee would have wanted to be remembered for, but rarely is. His work on navigation helped English explorers chart the world. His mathematical treatises advanced the field. His preface to Euclid's Elements taught a generation of English thinkers how to use geometry. He coined the phrase British Empire and helped provide the intellectual justification for England's expansion across the globe. This is a complicated legacy. Empire building led to colonization, exploitation, slavery. But Dee's influence on it is undeniable. In a different timeline, where the angelic sessions never happened, John Dee might be remembered as one of the important figures of the English Renaissance. A mathematician, a geographer, a scholar who helped build England's power. But that's not what happened. The angels overshadowed everything else. The mystical Dee eclipsed the scientific Dee. And maybe that's fitting, because the angelic sessions were what Dee cared about most. That was his great work, his consuming passion. He didn't spend 7 years talking to angels as a side project. It was the center of his life, so perhaps he got what he wanted after all. He's remembered, not as he might have wished, but remembered nonetheless. And we're left with the same questions that have haunted this story from the beginning. Who was Edward Kelley? con man, true believer, something more complicated? Did John Dee know, on some level, that he was being fooled? Or did he believe completely until the end? What really happened during those sessions? Was there any genuine spiritual experience, or was it all theatre? And the biggest question, did the angels speak? We cannot answer these questions with certainty. The evidence points in multiple directions. The truth is lost in the darkness of that room in Mortlake, in the candlelight, in the obsidian mirror. But we can say this: John Dee lived an extraordinary life. He was brilliant, dedicated, tragic, and deeply human. He wanted too much, believed too readily, sacrificed too completely, and in his failure, he created a mystery that has outlived him by 4 centuries. That's a kind of immortality, not the kind he sought, but perhaps the only kind that's real. 400 years later, historians and researchers are still trying to figure out who Edward Kelley really was and what he was doing in that room with John Dee. Let's look at the evidence for and against him being a con man. The case against Kelley. The facts are damning. Edward Kelley was a convicted criminal before he ever met Dee. In 1580, he was found guilty of forgery in Lancaster. His punishment was brutal, but standard for the crime. His ears were cut off. This was meant to mark him permanently as a criminal, to warn others not to trust him. So when he arrives at Dee's door in 1582, he is literally a forger. Someone whose crime was creating fake documents, pretending false things were real, and now he's claiming he can see angels that no one else can see. The irony is almost too obvious. He was using a false name when he met Dee, calling himself Edward Talbot instead of Edward Kelley. A man with something to hide. He was the only person who could see the angels. Dee never saw them. Jane Dee never saw them. No one else present during the sessions saw anything. Only Kelley. This is convenient if you're making it up. You're the only one who can verify your own claims. The angels often made demands that benefited Kelley. They said he should receive money, gifts, respect. They said Dee should trust him completely and never doubt him. When Dee expressed skepticism about something, the angels would become angry and threaten to leave. This is textbook manipulation. And then there's the wife-swapping incident. To most historians, this looks like exactly what it appears to be. Edward Kelley wanted Jane Dee, and he used the angelic command as a way to get her. It's sexual manipulation dressed up as divine order. After leaving Dee, Kelley tried the same tricks on other patrons. He went to Rudolf II in Prague and promised to turn lead into gold. When he couldn't deliver, Rudolf had him imprisoned. This is the behavior of a con man, not a genuine mystic. The case against Kelley is strong. He was a criminal who lied about his identity, made unfalsifiable claims, manipulated a wealthy patron for years, and eventually abandoned that patron to try the same con elsewhere. The case for Kelley, or at least the complications. But there are complications that make the story less clear-cut. The Enochian language is genuinely impressive. It's not random gibberish. It has structure, grammar, consistency. Thousands of words were dictated over years, letter by letter, and they all fit together into a coherent system. Could an uneducated forger really invent an entire language on the spot, in real time, while maintaining the fiction of receiving it from angels? Linguistic experts who have studied Enochian disagree about this. Some say it's too complex to have been improvised. Others point out it has English grammatical structures underneath, suggesting Kelley created it based on English. But even if he created it from English, that's still a remarkable feat. To invent a language with internal consistency, to maintain it over years of sessions, never contradicting yourself, never breaking character, that requires either genuine vision or extraordinary creative intelligence. Some of Kelley's predictions were oddly specific. Most were vague enough to fit multiple interpretations, but occasionally he would predict something that later occurred in a way that seemed beyond lucky guessing. Were these genuine precognition? Or just the odds? Make enough predictions, some will come true. He stayed with Dee for 7 years. Most cons are quick. Get in, take what you can, get out. Why would Kelley maintain this elaborate deception for 7 years, living in poverty alongside Dee, traveling across Europe in difficult conditions? If it was purely a con, why not just steal Dee's valuable books and disappear? Dee's notes suggest that Kelley sometimes seemed genuinely disturbed by what he saw in the mirror. He would emerge from sessions exhausted, frightened, resistant to continuing. If it was all an act, why include these details? They don't benefit the con. And finally, there's the possibility that Kelley started as a con man, but convinced himself along the way, that he began by pretending to see angels, but eventually came to believe in his own visions. Self-delusion is powerful. It's possible to lie so often that the lie becomes your truth. Most likely truth. The historical consensus leans toward Kelley being a con man, but not a simple one. He was probably intelligent, creative, and psychologically sophisticated. He may have genuinely believed some of what he was saying, or convinced himself to believe it. The sessions may have started as conscious fraud, but evolved into something more complex, a folie à deux, a shared delusion between two men who both desperately wanted it to be real. Interesting question is about John Dee himself. How did a brilliant man fall for this? Theory 1. The desperate believer. This is the most charitable interpretation, and probably the most accurate. Dee was genuinely brilliant. His mathematical and scientific work was real, but he had spent 50 years mastering human knowledge and had hit a wall. The books could only teach him so much. He wanted direct contact with divine wisdom, and he believed such contact was possible based on his reading of ancient texts and mystical traditions. When Kelley appeared and demonstrated the ability to see what Dee could not, Dee wanted desperately to believe it was real. And once he started believing, once he invested time and emotion and reputation, it became psychologically impossible to stop. This is called the sunk cost fallacy. The more you invest in something, the harder it is to walk away, even when evidence suggests you should. Dee invested 7 years, his reputation, his library, his family's well-being. To admit it was all a fraud would mean admitting he had destroyed his life for nothing. So he kept believing, or he kept choosing to believe, or he couldn't tell the difference anymore. His detailed diaries suggest genuine conviction. These are not the notes of someone knowingly perpetrating a fraud. They're the records of a man who truly believed he was receiving divine wisdom, and he died poor. If this were a knowing con, Dee would have found a way to profit. Instead, he ended up selling his books to survive. That's not the behavior of a con man. That's the behavior of a true believer who sacrificed everything for his faith. Theory 2. The spy. Using occult. Cover. This is the more cynical interpretation. and it has some intriguing evidence behind it. Some historians believe John Dee was one of Queen Elizabeth's intelligence agents. There's evidence he signed documents with 007, two circles representing the eyes of God watching and the number 7. If this is true, then his travels across Europe take on a different meaning. From 1583 to 1589, he moved through Poland, Prague, and various German territories. This coincided with the build-up to the Spanish Armada. Spain was preparing to invade England, and English spies were gathering intelligence across Europe about Spanish plans and alliances. Rudolph II's court in Prague was full of Spanish agents. It would be the perfect place for an English spy to gather information. And what better cover than being an eccentric mystic conducting angelic séances? No one would suspect that the crazy Englishman talking to angels was actually observing troop movements, listening to diplomatic conversations, and sending coded reports back to London. The problem with this theory is that Dee's own diaries seem to show genuine belief. Why keep such elaborate fake diaries if they were just cover? Unless the diaries themselves were the intelligence reports written in code that looks like mystical nonsense. Some researchers have tried to decode the angelic messages as ciphered intelligence reports. So far, no one has succeeded convincingly. Theory 3. Both were true. Most modern historians think the answer is both. Dee probably did some intelligence work for Elizabeth, and he genuinely believed in the angelic communications. Renaissance people didn't separate these things the way we do. Spying and mysticism weren't contradictory pursuits. They were both ways of seeking hidden knowledge. Dee could have been gathering intelligence in Prague, while also genuinely believing he was receiving messages from angels. The two purposes could coexist. This explains his continued faith, even after losing everything. It wasn't just about maintaining cover. He truly believed. The sessions were real to him, even if they served multiple purposes. Let's talk about the language itself, because it's genuinely strange. Over 7 years, the angels supposedly dictated a complete language to Kelley and Dee. It has a unique alphabet of 21 letters, a vocabulary of thousands of words, consistent grammar and syntax, complex pronunciation rules, internal logical structure. The angels called it Enochian, after the biblical patriarch Enoch, who walked with God and was taken up to heaven. The linguistic analysis. Modern linguists have studied Enochian extensively. Their conclusions are mixed. Some observations. It has English-like grammatical structures underneath, suggesting it was derived from English word order. Often works backwards from English, suggesting deliberate reversal rather than independent creation. Some words seem to be based on Hebrew, Latin, or other languages Dee and Kelley knew, but the vocabulary is large and consistent enough that creating it on the spot seems difficult. The debate centers on, could Edward Kelley really have invented this language in real time during sessions, letter by letter, without ever contradicting himself or losing consistency? If he did, he was a creative genius on par with J.R.R. Tolkien, who spent decades creating the languages for Middle-earth. To do it impromptu while pretending to see angels would be an astonishing feat if he didn't, if he prepared it in advance. That suggests elaborate premeditation. He would have had to create the language before meeting Dee, then slowly reveal it over years of sessions, never making mistakes or contradictions. That's also impressively difficult. Or, of course, the angels dictated it, and it's a genuinely divine language. But that requires believing the angels were real, its survival and use. Here's what's undeniable. whether divinely inspired or human-created. Enochian became real through use. In the late 1800s, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn rediscovered Dee's work. They studied the angelic diaries, reconstructed the Enochian system, and made it central to their magical practice. Aleister Crowley, probably the most famous occultist of the 20th century, used Enochian magic extensively. He claimed it was powerful and dangerous. Modern ceremonial magicians, chaos magicians, and various occult practitioners still use Enochian today. There are books teaching the system, websites devoted to it, people who claim it produces results. Whether it works in any objective sense is impossible to verify. But subjectively, for the people who use it, it's real. So in a strange way, even if Edward Kelley made it up, he created something that has taken on a life of its own. That's a kind of magic, even if not the literal kind. Let's examine the spy theory more carefully, because it's one of the most intriguing aspects of the mystery. The evidence. Some documents exist where John Dee appears to have signed with a symbol that looks like 007. Two circles, which could represent the eyes of God watching, or just two zeros and a 7. He definitely did work for Sir Francis Walsingham, who ran Elizabeth I's intelligence network. This is documented. Dee had contacts across Europe, spoke multiple languages, and had legitimate reasons to travel. He's exactly the profile of someone who would make a good intelligence agent. His trip to Europe, 1583 to 1589, coincided with one of the most dangerous periods for England. The Spanish were planning invasion. The Catholic Church was trying to reconvert Protestant countries by force. England needed intelligence about who was planning what, which rulers might be allies, where threats were developing. Dee spent time in the courts of Poland, Prague, and various German territories, all places where Spanish influence was strong and where information about Catholic plans could be gathered. The angelic sessions provided perfect cover. Who would suspect that the eccentric Englishman conducting séances was actually an intelligence agent? He could stay in courts, build relationships with nobles, be present at sensitive conversations, all while appearing to be a harmless mystic. The problems. But there are issues with this theory. First, if Dee's diaries were coded intelligence reports, no one has successfully decoded them. And you'd think that after 400 years, if there was a code, someone would have cracked it. Second, Dee's behavior after returning to England doesn't match that of a successful spy. He received no rewards, no honors, no pension for secret services. If he had been a valuable intelligence asset, Elizabeth would have taken care of him. Instead, he was left to die in poverty. Third, the sheer volume of the diaries suggests genuine belief. These aren't brief coded messages. They're thousands of pages of detailed angelic conversations. That's an insane amount of effort to maintain a cover story. Most likely Dee probably did some intelligence work, but it wasn't his primary purpose. He genuinely believed in the angelic communications and pursued them for their own sake. If his travels also allowed him to gather intelligence for Walsingham, that was a secondary benefit, not the main goal. The 007 signature, if real, probably just meant under God's watchful eyes, or something similar, a pious formula, not a secret agent code number. Let's ground ourselves in physical reality. Whatever the truth about the angels, we have actual objects that survive from John Dee's life. The Obsidian Mirror, British Museum, London. This is the real thing. The actual mirror that sat on the table in Mortlake while Edward Kelley stared into it. You can go to the British Museum and see it. It's a disc of polished obsidian, volcanic glass, about 6 inches in diameter. It's Aztec, made in Mexico before the Spanish conquest, somehow acquired by Dee. When you stand in front of it in the museum, you're looking at the same object that was in that room, the same surface that Kelley claimed to see angels in. It's a strange feeling, connecting physically to this historical mystery. The Crystal Balls, British Museum and Science Museum, London. Several of Dee's crystal spheres survive, made of clear quartz, about 4 to 6 inches in diameter. These were also used for scrying. The Science Museum has one on display. Like the mirror, it's startling to see the actual object, the diaries. British Museum, Bodleian Library, Oxford. The most important surviving artifacts are Dee's journals. Thousands of pages in his own handwriting, documenting the angelic sessions from 1582 to 1589. They're detailed, methodical, obsessive. Every session is recorded, the date, time, who was present, what Kelley saw, what the angels said, the Enochian words dictated, the English translations. Reading them is eerie. This is not the work of someone being deliberately fraudulent. This is the work of someone who believed absolutely in what he was doing. The diaries are available in various libraries and have been published in scholarly editions. You can read them yourself if you want to dive into the mystery firsthand. The Wax Seals, British Museum. Several of the wax seals used to summon angels survive. They're circular discs about 3 inches in diameter, inscribed with angelic names and symbols in Dee's handwriting. These were part of the ritual equipment, placed around the scrying stone to create sacred space and call specific angels. They're fragile, and the wax has hardened and darkened with age, but the inscriptions are still visible. Edward Kelley's fate is almost as mysterious as his life. After separating from Dee in 1589, Kelley stayed in Bohemia. He promoted himself as an alchemist who could turn base metals into gold, the same promise that had intrigued Count Wasky years earlier. Emperor Rudolph II, who had sent Dee away under pressure from the Pope, was still interested in alchemy. He invited Kelley to Prague and funded his experiments. For a while, Kelley lived well. He was given land, money, a title, but the gold never materialized. Rudolph grew impatient and eventually had Kelley imprisoned in 1591. Kelley spent several years in prison, allegedly trying to escape multiple times. In 1597, he either died or disappeared. Some accounts say he died falling from a tower while trying to escape, a fall that broke his legs and ultimately killed him. He would have been about 42 years old. But as with everything about Kelley, even his death is uncertain. Some records suggest he didn't die in 1597. There are accounts of someone matching his description appearing in England in the early 1600s, still claiming to be an alchemist. His body was never positively identified. The reports of his death are second-hand and contradictory, so we have another mystery. Did Edward Kelley die in Prague, or did he fake his death and escape to continue his cons elsewhere? We'll probably never know. Like everything else about him, his end is shrouded in ambiguity. There's one more piece to consider: William Shakespeare's play, The Tempest. The play was written around 1610 to 1611, just a year or two after John Dee's death. It tells the story of Prospero, a scholar and magician who was the Duke of Milan. His obsession with magic led to his political downfall and exile on an island there. He commands spirits, performs magic, and possesses a library of powerful books. At the end of the play, he gives up his magic, drowns his books, and returns to the human world. The parallels to John Dee are striking. Scholar who becomes obsessed with magic. Political consequences of his obsession. Commands spirits, or thinks he does. Possesses powerful magical books. Eventually gives up magic, or should. Father figure with a daughter. Most Shakespeare scholars believe Prospero was at least partially inspired by John Dee. Shakespeare was writing in London in the early 1600s. Dee was a famous figure, notorious as the conjurer. His story would have been known. The question The Tempest asks, and leaves unanswered, is the same question we're asking. Was the magic real? Or was Prospero deluding himself? Should he have spent his life on magic? Or should he have stayed in the human world with human responsibilities? At the end, Prospero chooses to give up magic. He drowns his books and returns to Milan to resume his duties as Duke. Was Shakespeare suggesting this is what Dee should have done? That the pursuit of magical knowledge is ultimately hollow? That human responsibilities, family, community, practical service, are more real and valuable than conversations with spirits? We don't know if Dee ever saw the play, but the parallel is haunting. Prospero gets to make the choice Dee never did, to walk away from magic while there's still time.
John Dee's legacy is split between two worlds. In occultism, he's a hero to practitioners of ceremonial magic. The Enochian system is widely used. Books about Dee appear regularly in occult bookstores. He's treated as a genuine magician who successfully made contact with angels. To this community, the question of whether it was real misses the point. The system works for them. It produces results, subjective, if not objective. Whether the angels were objectively real or Dee and Kelley tapped into some deep psychological archetype doesn't matter. The magic is functional. In history, modern historians try to see the whole picture. They recognize Dee's genuine contributions to mathematics, navigation, and geography. They acknowledge his influence on English imperial expansion. They study his role in Elizabethan politics and possible intelligence work, but they also can't ignore the angelic sessions. That's the bulk of his surviving writings. That's what he devoted his mature life to. You can't understand John Dee without confronting the mystery of those 7 years with Edward Kelley. And increasingly, historians are trying to understand Dee as a figure of his time rather than judging him by modern standards. In the Renaissance, science and magic weren't opposites. They were part of the same quest for knowledge. Dee wasn't unusual in combining them. He was just more thorough and more documented than most.
Let's separate what we can be certain about from what remains speculative. Certainties. John Dee lived 1527 to 1608/9. He was a brilliant mathematician, geographer, and polymath. He advised Queen Elizabeth I for many years. He owned the largest private library in England. He conducted scrying sessions with Edward Kelley from 1582 to 1589. They claimed to receive messages from angels. They created or recorded a complete language called Enochian Dee. Traveled to Europe, 1583 to 1589, with his family and Kelley. His library was vandalized and mostly destroyed while he was abroad. He returned to England, impoverished, and his reputation was ruined. He died poor and largely forgotten. His diaries and ritual objects survive in museums. Strong. Probabilities. Edward Kelley was at least partially conning Dee. The wife-swapping incident was Kelley's manipulation, not divine command. Dee genuinely believed most or all of what Kelley reported. Financial desperation and desire for knowledge made Dee vulnerable. Some intelligence gathering may have happened alongside the mystical pursuits. The destruction of his library broke him psychologically. The unknowables. Was Dee ever aware he was being conned? Did he have doubts he didn't record in his diaries? How much was espionage? How much genuine mystical belief? What exactly happened during those European years? Did he die still believing, or did doubt consume him at the end? Was there any genuine mystical, spiritual experience, or was it all theatre? And most importantly, did the angels speak? That last question cannot be answered by historical research. It's a question of faith, not evidence. Either you believe supernatural communication is possible, or you don't. The historical record can't prove it one way or the other. What we can say is, John Dee believed it, and that belief shaped his life, his choices, his fate. Whether the angels were real or not, their impact on his life was undeniably real. John Dee dies in his house at Mortlake, sometime in December 1608 or early 1609. The records are unclear, even about the date of his death, fitting for a man whose entire later life was shrouded in uncertainty. He is 81 years old. His daughter Catherine has been caring for him. His wife Jane has been dead for several years. His library, the great work of his life, is a fraction of what it was. Most of the books sold off to pay for necessities. A few people attend his funeral, mostly local neighbours, perhaps a few old friends. No one from the royal court. No grand ceremony for the man who once chose the date of a queen's coronation. He is buried in the churchyard of St. Mary's Church in Mortlake, where he lived most of his adult life. But within a generation, the location of his grave is forgotten. Today, no one knows exactly where John Dee's body rests. The church is still there, the graveyard still has old stones, but his marker, if he ever had one, is lost. The man who wanted to be remembered, who talked to angels and believed he would change the world, dies and disappears into the earth without a trace. But absence isn't the same as nothing. Walk into the British Museum in London. Go to the Enlightenment Gallery. There, in a glass case, sits the obsidian mirror, the actual physical object. The same polished black stone that sat on a table in Mortlake in 1582, while Edward Kelley stared into it claiming to see angels. You can stand in front of it. You can see your own reflection in its dark surface, just as Kelley saw. What? Angels? His own imagination? Something else? The mirror is real. It exists. You can visit it today. Nearby, in other cases, are the crystal balls, the wax seals with angelic names, Dee's own handwriting preserved on vellum, describing what the angels said. These are not legends. These are not stories embellished over centuries. These are physical objects, documents you can read, artifacts you can examine. Whatever happened in that room, it left traces in the physical world that survived 400 years. And we still don't know what really happened. Was Edward Kelley one of history's greatest con men? Did he maintain an elaborate fraud for 7 years, inventing an entire language, manipulating a brilliant scholar, all for modest financial gain and ultimately ending up in prison? Or was he a genuine mystic, someone who truly saw visions, whether you call them angels or hallucinations or something else? Did he believe his own claims? Was John Dee a fool, A brilliant man brought low by desperation and wishful thinking? Or was he something more complicated? A man doing intelligence work under mystical cover? A scholar exploring the boundaries between science and magic? Someone whose beliefs we can't fully understand because we live in a different world with different assumptions? And the question we can never answer: did the angels speak? 4 centuries of investigation haven't solved it. Historians have examined the evidence, linguists have analyzed the Enochian language, psychologists have offered theories about delusion and manipulation. Occultists have practiced the system and claimed it works. But we're no closer to knowing the truth than John Dee was when he sat in his library, pen in hand, writing down Edward Kelley's words. John Dee died believing he had failed. The great work, contact with angels, divine wisdom revealed, seemed to have produced nothing of value. His library was destroyed. His reputation was ruined. The Queen had forgotten him. He had no money, no position, no recognition. But now, 400 years later, what do we see? His mathematical and navigational work influenced the expansion of English power across the globe. The phrase British Empire that he coined became reality. His techniques helped explorers chart unknown waters. His writings on geography and mathematics educated a generation. The Enochian language, whether divinely inspired or human-created, is practiced by occultists worldwide. It became part of Western magical tradition. Whether it works or not, it's real in the sense that it exists and is used. His story has been told in books, plays, films. Shakespeare almost certainly based Prospero on him. Modern authors write novels about him. He appears in fantasy and historical fiction as the archetypal Renaissance magician. And the mystery itself has become his legacy. We're still talking about him, still trying to figure out what happened, still fascinated by the question of the angels. He wanted to be remembered, and he succeeded. Not quite in the way he imagined, but completely. There's something powerful about the objects that remain. Go to the British Museum, look at that obsidian mirror. You're looking at the same thing Edward Kelley looked at, the same surface, the same polished stone. 400 years separate you from that room in Mortlake, but the mirror doesn't care. It sits there, dark and polished, reflecting whatever is in front of it. When you look at it, you're as close as you can get to being in that room. The same light that illuminated Kelley's face illuminates yours. The same reflective surface that showed him. Whatever he saw shows you your own face. What did he see? You're looking at the same object. The mirror hasn't changed. If there were angels in it then, why aren't they there now? If there weren't angels then, why did Kelley claim to see them? The mirror can't answer, it just reflects. And maybe that's the point. The mirror is a mirror. It shows you what you bring to it. Kelley brought visions of angels. We bring skepticism and curiosity. The mirror remains the same. Why does this story still matter? Why are we, in 2025, still talking about an Elizabethan scholar who talked to angels? I think it's because the story asks questions we still struggle with. How do smart people fall for things that seem obviously wrong? Dee was brilliant, one of the most educated people in England, and yet he believed Edward Kelley, a convicted criminal, when he claimed to see angels. How? We see this today. Intelligent people fall for scams, believe conspiracy theories, invest in fraudulent schemes. Intelligence doesn't protect you from self-deception. Sometimes it makes you more vulnerable because you're so good at justifying your beliefs. What's the line between faith and delusion? Dee believed he was communicating with divine beings. Millions of religious people today believe they communicate with God through prayer. What's the difference? Is it just that one is socially acceptable and the other isn't? When does dedication become obsession? Dee devoted 7 years to the angelic sessions. He sacrificed his library, his reputation, his family's well-being. Was he deeply committed to truth or dangerously obsessed? Where's the line? These aren't just historical questions. They're questions about human nature, about belief, about how we decide what's real. And John Dee's story doesn't give us easy answers. It gives us a man who was brilliant and foolish, dedicated and obsessed, possibly a spy and definitely a mystic. He doesn't fit into neat categories. He's complicated. And that's why he's still interesting. Picture that room one last time. Mortlake, winter night, 1582. The library filled with 4,000 books. Candlelight flickering on leather bindings, on gold leaf, on the spines of manuscripts that survived the fall of Rome and the burning of Alexandria. John Dee sits at his desk, 55 years old, one of the most learned men in England. His pen is ready. Edward Kelley sits before the obsidian mirror, 27 years old, a convicted forger with no ears, a man with a false name. The mirror sits between them, dark and polished, reflecting candlelight. Kelley stares into it. He begins to speak. I see him, the angel Uriel. He is here. Dee writes it all down, and 400 years later, we're still trying to figure out what really happened in that room. Did the angels speak? Or did John Dee spend 7 years listening to a con man, believing so desperately in divine wisdom that he couldn't see the fraud in front of him? We will never know. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly as it should be. The man who devoted his life to seeking ultimate knowledge became, in the end, a question that cannot be answered, an unsolvable mystery, a riddle written in Enochian that has no translation. He wanted to transcend human limitations, to know what cannot be known, to speak with angels. He may have failed at that, or he may have succeeded. We can't tell. But he succeeded at something else, something he didn't intend. He became immortal through mystery itself, not because he found the answers, but because he left us with questions we can't stop asking. What do you think happened in that room in Mortlake? Was Edward Kelley a con man? Was John Dee a fool? Or was something stranger happening? Something we can't explain with fraud or delusion? Leave your theories in the comments below. I want to hear what you think. And if you found this story fascinating, if you appreciate the mystery as much as the attempt to solve it, please like this video and subscribe to the Midnight Archives. We explore the dark corners of history, not always the supernatural, but always the unexplained. The stories that don't have neat endings, the mysteries that respect your intelligence enough to leave you with questions. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the life of John Dee. We didn't solve the mystery, but maybe that's appropriate. Maybe some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. Maybe the greatest wisdom is knowing that some questions don't have answers and being okay with that. The obsidian mirror is in the British Museum. Case number AOASL 309. You can go see it. It's there right now, waiting. The same mirror, the same polished surface, the same dark glass that Edward Kelley stared into, claiming to see angels. Go look at it if you can. Stand in front of it. See your reflection where Kelley saw divine beings. And ask yourself, what would you see if you wanted desperately enough to see something? That's the mystery of John Dee. Not whether the angels were real, But why we need to believe they might have been 400 years later, he's still teaching us something. Not about angels, but about ourselves.